I chose saving my dog instead of paying for my daughter's wedding. And now I am shaking as I realize I have officially destroyed my own family. You might call me a monster for ruining what was supposed to be the happiest day of Sarah's life. But you do not know what I found in my dog's food bowl the night before the ceremony. My daughter Sarah and my own brother Rob did not just demand my life savings for a luxury party. They conspired to poison my golden retriever with sleeping pills just to steal his surgery fund. They looked me in the eye and comforted me while secretly celebrating the death of the only creature that ever truly loved me. All for $15,000. I raised my child to be a princess, but she turned into a predator who would trade a life for a venue deposit. Yesterday, I stood in front of her guests and exposed their cruelty, sending my brother to jail and leaving my daughter homeless. I burned my legacy to the ground to save an animal, and now the silence in this empty house is tearing me apart. Is loyalty worth more than blood? Or have I become the very villain I was trying to fight? Please tell me. Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling. 2 hashes greater than did I do the right thing? My name is Delilah Vance, and I am 58 years old. Though some days, after a particularly brutal shift at the distribution center, I feel closer to 80. They call me a warehouse operations manager, which sounds fancy, but mostly it means I spend my nights dodging forklifts and making sure boxes of everything from toilet paper to inflatable pool toys get shipped out on time. It is not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Or at least it used to. I live just outside of Columbus, Ohio, in a 3-bedroom house that used to feel like home. Now, it mostly feels Xiaoyujinghaoling. 2 hash is greater than empty. My husband, bless his soul, built this place with his own 2 hands back in 1988. He always dreamed of a big family, laughter echoing through the halls, kids running around in the backyard. We had that for a while. 3 beautiful daughters, Sarah, Emily, and Chloe. Now they are grown, moved out, and Xiaoyujinghao Ling. 2 hashes greater than well. Let us just say they do not visit as often as a mother might like. The house is paid off. Thankfully, Harold, that was my husband, was always good with money, frugal, even. I try to be, too, but it is hard, especially now, since he passed 10 years ago. It is just me rattling around in this big old house, along with Buddy, my golden retriever. Buddy is the only one who really understands me. I think he does not judge my late-night television habits or the way I sometimes talk to Harold's picture on the mantelpiece. Life is not exactly exciting, but it is. Xiaoyujinghaoling. Ling. 2 hash is greater than manageable. Predictable. I work my shift, come home, walk, Buddy, maybe watch an old movie on the Hallmark Channel. Weekends are for grocery shopping, always clipping coupons. Harold would be proud. And trying to ignore the dust bunnies gathering under the furniture. I even have a little emergency fund tucked away. It is nothing extravagant, maybe $15,000. Squirreled away in an old cookie tin on the top shelf of the pantry. Harold always said, a little something for a rainy day. Delilah, and believe me, there have been plenty of rainy days. That money is supposed to be for Xiaoyujinghaoling. Ling. 2 hash is greater than well. For whatever life throws at me. A new water heater, a medical emergency, maybe even a little trip somewhere. Someday, but lately, I have been feeling Xiaoyujinghaoling. 2 hash is greater than uneasy. A sense of foreboding, like a storm is brewing on the horizon. It started a few weeks ago. Small things. The faucet dripping in the kitchen. A weird clicking noise coming from the engine of my old Buick. The way Buddy has been coughing lately. A dry, hacking sound that rattles through his whole body. And then there are the calls from Sarah. She is my oldest. Always been. Xiaoyu Jinghaoling. Tuhash is greater than demanding. Ambitious. I suppose you could say she lives in the city. Works in marketing. Always chasing the next promotion. The next Instagram-worthy experience. She calls every few weeks. Usually wanting something. Advice. A lawn. Someone to listen to her complain about her boss. This morning, though, her voice was different, higher pitched, almost Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. Tuhash is greater than giddy. Mom, you will not believe what happened. She squealed into the phone, barely letting me get a word in. Mark and I are coming home this weekend. We have some very exciting news to share. Mark is her fiancé, a lawyer, or so he tells us. He seems nice enough. I suppose, polished, a little too polished. Maybe he has got that slicked back hair and expensive suit thing going on. Harold always said, you cannot trust a man who spends more on his haircut than you do on groceries. I tried to sound enthusiastic, but a knot was already forming in my stomach. Sarah's exciting news rarely bodes well for my bank account. As I hung up the phone, Buddy started coughing again, a particularly violent spasm that left him gasping for air. I knelt down beside him, stroking his fur, trying to reassure him, and myself, it is okay. Boy, I whispered, we will figure it out. We always do. But deep down, a voice whispered back, a cold, a hard voice I had not heard in a long time. This time, Delilah, I am not so sure. Something is coming, and I do not think we are ready for it. The waiting room at the veterinary clinic always smelled the same. It was a mix of rubbing alcohol, wet, and that underlying scent of fear that animals seemed to release when they knew they were somewhere they did not want to be. I sat in the plastic orange chair, my hand resting on Buddy's head. He was panting, but not from heat. His eyes were glazed over, lacking that bright spark of mischief I had loved for 8 years. Dr. Evans called us back 10 minutes later. He was a kind man, with graying temples and hands that had treated every pet I had ever owned. He did not smile this time. He put the X-ray up on the light box and pointed to a cloudy white mass near Buddy's stomach. It is a tumor, Delilah, he said, his voice soft but firm. It is aggressive. If we do not operate within the next 48 hours, it will rupture. And if that happens, there is nothing we can do. I felt the blood drain from my face. I asked him how much it would cost. He hesitated before looking at his clipboard. It is a complicated procedure, with the surgery, the anesthesia, and the post-operative care. You are looking at roughly $10,000. $10,000. The number hung in the air like a lead weight. That was 2/3 of everything I had in the world. That money in the cookie tin was my safety net. It was my roof repair fund. It was my car repair fund. It was my protect Delilah from ending up on the street fund. But then I looked down at Buddy. He nudged my hand with his cold, wet nose and let out a small whimper. He trusted me. I was his whole world. How could I put a price on that? I took a deep breath. Do it, I said. I will bring the cash tomorrow morning. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of terror and resolve. I was about to wipe out my life savings, but at least I was doing the right thing. Or so I told myself. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a car I did not recognize, parked in front of the garage. It was a sleek, silver Lexus, polished to a mirror shine. My daughter Sarah stood on the porch, checking her reflection in the window glass. Beside her stood Mark, looking like he had just stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive watches. They did not see me park. I watched them for a moment. Sarah was adjusting her hair, fussing over a stray strand, while Mark tapped impatiently on his phone. There was no warmth between them, just a practiced posture of perfection. I got out of the car, helping Buddy down gently. Sarah turned and flashed a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Mom," she squealed, rushing over to give me a stiff hug that lasted exactly 2 seconds. She pulled back and held out her left hand. The diamond on her ring finger was the size of a grape. "We are engaged," she announced. Mark stepped forward and offered a firm, dry handshake. "It is good to see you. Delilah, congratulations," I managed to say, though my mind was still reeling from the vet visit. I ushered them inside. Sarah did not even look at Buddy, who was limping slowly behind us. She walked straight into the kitchen and sat down at the table, crossing her legs. "We have big news, Mom," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Mark and I found the venue. It is Rosewood Manor. You know, that old estate on the hill? The one with the rose gardens and the ballroom with the crystal chandeliers?" I nodded slowly. Everyone knew Rosewood Manor. It was the most expensive venue in the county. "Well," Sarah continued, leaning forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "they had a cancellation for next Saturday. Can you believe it? A prime slot in June just opened up. If we book it now, they will give us a 20% discount. But we have to put down the deposit today." She paused, waiting for my reaction. I felt a cold sweat prickle on the back of my neck. "How much is the deposit?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. $15,000, Sarah said. She said it casually, as if she were asking for $20 for gas. I stared at her. $15,000. That was exactly the amount in my tin. The exact amount. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "that is a lot of money. I do not have that kind of cash just lying around for a party." Sarah's smile faltered. Mark shifted in his seat, checking his watch. "Come on." "Mom," Sarah said, a hard edge creeping into her voice. "Daddy left you the insurance money. I know you have it. You have been hoarding it in that stupid cookie tin for years. I am your daughter. This is my wedding. It is the most important day of my life." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the desperation in her eyes, the need to be envied, the need to show off. And then I looked at Buddy, curled up on his rug in the corner, his breathing shallow and labored. "I cannot give it to you, Sarah," I said quietly. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed loudly in the background. "Excuse me?" Sarah asked, her voice icy. "Buddy is sick," I explained, gesturing to the dog. "He has a tumor. He needs surgery right away. It is going to cost $10,000. I have to use the savings for him." Sarah stood up so abruptly, her chair screeched against the linoleum floor. Her face twisted into a mask of ugly rage. "Are you joking?" she shrieked. "You are choosing a dog over me, a dying, old, flea-bitten animal over your own daughter's happiness? It is not like that, Sarah," I pleaded, reaching out to touch her arm. She jerked away as if I were contagious. "It is exactly like that," she yelled. "Mark and I need this venue. If we do not get rosewood, the whole aesthetic is ruined. I have already told everyone on Instagram. Do you want to humiliate me? Do you want me to look like a failure? I felt small. I felt selfish. The old habit of giving in, of fixing her problems, of smoothing things over, rose up in my throat. I wanted to say yes, just to stop her screaming. But then Buddy coughed again, a sound like tearing paper. He is in pain. Sarah, I whispered. He is family too. He is a dog. She screamed, slamming her hand on the table. He is going to die anyway. Why are you wasting my inheritance on a beast that licks its own rear end? Mark stood up then, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. He looked at me with a disappointment that felt rehearsed. Delilah, he said smoothly, his voice reasonable and calm, making me feel hysterical by comparison. Perhaps you are not thinking clearly. This is Sarah's future. The dog, Sauitzinhaling, 2 hash is greater than well. Nature takes its course. Surely you can see the priority here. I looked from Mark to Sarah. They stood there like a united front. A wall of entitlement and greed. And for the first time in my life, looking at my daughter's contorted face, I realized she did not see me as her mother. She saw me as an automatic teller machine. I am sorry, I said, my voice shaking, but my resolve hardening. My answer is no. Buddy gets the surgery. Sarah stared at me, her mouth open in disbelief. Then she narrowed her eyes. You will regret this. Mom, she hissed. You will be sorry you ever chose that mutt over me. She stormed out of the kitchen, Mark following close behind. I heard the front door slam, shaking the pictures on the walls. I sat alone in the silence, my hands trembling in my lap. I had kept my money, but I had a terrible feeling I had just started a war I was not equipped to fight. The doorbell rang 2 hours later. It was a sharp, insistent sound that made me jump in my skin. I was sitting on the floor of the living room with Buddy's head in my lap, absent-mindedly stroking the soft velvet of his ears. The house had been silent since Sarah stormed out. A heavy, suffocating silence that felt like the air before a tornado touches down. I wiped my eyes and went to the door. Standing there was my brother, Rob. Rob has always been the handsome one in the family. Even at 55, he had a full head of hair, dyed a rich chestnut brown to hide the gray, and he wore a suit that looked expensive if you did not look too closely at the frayed cuffs. He smelled of peppermint breath mints and faint, stale tobacco smoke. Hey, sis, he said, his voice dripping with a concern that felt almost too thick, like syrup that had been left out in the sun. Sarah called me. She was hysterical. Can I come in? I stepped back to let him pass. Behind him, Sarah and Mark walked in, their heads bowed. They did not look at me. It was a procession, solemn and serious, as if they were walking into a funeral home. We need to talk. Delilah, Rob said, guiding me toward my own armchair. He positioned himself on the coffee table right in front of me, forcing me to look up at him. Sarah and Mark sat on the sofa, flanking him like silent sentinels. I felt small. I felt like a child being called into the principal's office. I know you are upset, Rob began, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. Sarah told me about the situation with the dog, and about the money. It is not just a dog. Rob, I said, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. It is Buddy. He is sick. I know. Rob soothed, holding up a hand to stop me. But Delilah, we need to be rational here. Sarah is worried about you. We all are. You have not been yourself lately. I blinked. What do you mean? Rob exchanged a look with Sarah. It was a quick, darting glance that made my stomach turn. Mom. Sarah spoke up, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine pity. You have been forgetting things. Last month you forgot my birthday, and the week before that, you left the stove on. We think. Sui Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than we think. The grief is finally catching up to you. Living in this big house all alone. Talking to Dad's picture. Sui Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than it is not healthy. I stared at her. I had not forgotten her birthday. I had sent her a card and a check, just like I always did. She never cashed the check because she said it was too small. And the stove? That was one time. 3 years ago. When the pilot light went out, I am not losing my mind. Sarah, I said. Sitting up straighter, Rob reached out and patted my knee. His hand felt cold. Nobody said you are losing your mind. Sis, but stress does strange things to a person. And this situation with the vet? It sounds like you are being taken advantage of. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It looked like a printout from a website. I did some research on the way over, Rob said, his tone authoritative. Dr. Evans? He has some very mixed reviews online. People say he preys on elderly women, scares them into expensive, unnecessary surgeries for pets that are already at the end of their lives. I felt a seed of doubt planted in my chest. Dr. Evans had been our vet for 20 years, but had he seemed eager to operate? Had he pushed too hard? $10,000 is robbery. Delilah. Rob continued, shaking his head sadly. For a dog that is, let us be honest, 8 years old? That is ancient for a golden retriever. Even if he survives the surgery, which is unlikely, his quality of life will be terrible. He will be in pain. He will be drugged up. Is that what you want for him? To suffer just because you cannot let go? I looked over at Buddy. He was sleeping, his breathing raspy. Was I being selfish? Was I torturing him just to keep him around? But he looked at me. I whispered, he wanted me to help him. Rob Sehil. A long, mournful sound. That is projection. Delilah, you are projecting your own feelings onto an animal. Look, I know how much you loved Harold, and I know the dog was his favorite, but Harold was a practical man. He would never want you to bankrupt yourself, to ruin your own financial security. For a dog, hearing Harold's name felt like a slap. Rob knew exactly where to hit. Harold would want you to support your family. Rob pressed on, his voice gaining momentum. He would want Sarah to have a beautiful wedding. That money, Sayu Tsingha, Ling, 2# is greater than that $15,000. Sayu Tsingha, Ling, 2# is greater than it is. Not just for a party. It is an investment in Sarah's happiness. It is a legacy. Do you really think Harold would choose a dog over walking his daughter down the aisle in the wedding of her dreams? I felt tears welling up in my eyes. The room seemed to be spinning slowly. Their faces were blurring together. Mom, please, Sarah said, sliding off the sofa to kneel beside my chair. She took my hand. I am sorry I yelled earlier. I was just so hurt. I want you to be part of my day. I want you to be the mother of the bride. But if you spend all that money on a surgery that might not even work, Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2# is greater than we cannot afford the venue. We will have to get married at the courthouse. It will break my heart. Is that what you want? To punish me? I looked down at my daughter. She looked so young, so vulnerable. And then I looked at Rob, my little brother, the only family I had left from my generation. He looked so sure, so concerned. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am just a lonely old woman clinging to the past. Maybe the tumor is inoperable and Dr. Evans is just trying to squeeze money out of a grieving widow. Maybe I am the villain here. What should I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Rob smiled. A small, tight smile. You do the humane thing. Delilah, you let Buddy go. You give him peace. Dr. Evans can put him to sleep gently. No pain, no suffering, and you save that money for the living. For your family? He squeezed my knee. It is the hard choice, sis, but it is the right choice. I looked at Buddy again. He twitched in his sleep, chasing rabbits in his dreams. To kill him, to pay a stranger to stop his heart. The thought made bile rise in my throat, but the logic Rob was spinning was like a spider web, sticky and impossible to escape. I need to think about it, I said. Of course, Rob said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. But do not take too long. Sarah needs to make the deposit by Monday morning. And honestly, letting the dog suffer another day. Sayuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than that is cruel. He walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge without asking. Grabbing a bottle of water, he moved through my house with an entitlement that set my teeth on edge. Yet I said nothing. Mark stood up and checked his phone. We should get going. Babe, we have that dinner reservation. Sarah stood up and kissed my cheek. Her lips were dry. Think about it. Mom, do it for Dad. Do it for me. They filed out of the house, leaving me alone in the dimming light. I sat there for a long time, the silence ringing in my ears. I walked over to the pantry and reached for the cookie tin on the top shelf. I pulled it down. It felt heavy. Inside were stacks of $100 bills, wrapped in rubber bands. Every bill represented an extra shift, a skipped meal, a coupon clipped. It was my blood and sweat. I looked at the money, and then I looked at Buddy. Am I crazy? I asked the empty room. Buddy lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes were milky, but for a second, I saw it. I saw the absolute, unwavering trust. He did not care about the money. He did not care about weddings or venues. He just knew that I was his person. But Rob's voice echoed in my head. You are losing your mind. You are being selfish. Harold would be disappointed. I put the lid back on the tin. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely close it. I felt a crack forming in my heart, a fissure of doubt that threatened to split me in two. I wanted to believe my family loved me. I wanted to believe they had my best interests at heart. Because if they did not, Sayuting Holing, 2 hash is greater than if this was all a lie. Sayuting Holing, 2 hash is greater than I was truly, completely alone. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. As I drank, I noticed something on the counter. Rob had left his phone, not his main phone, the sleek black smartphone he always used. This was a smaller, older model, a burner phone. He must have set it down when he got the water and forgot it. I stared at it. It was locked. The screen dark. Why would Rob have 2 phones? I pushed the thought away. He was a businessman. Sort of. Maybe it was for work. I was being paranoid. Sarah was right. I was seeing shadows where there were none. But as I turned off the lights to go to bed, leaving a nightlight on for Buddy, I could not shake the feeling that the shadows in this house were getting longer and darker, and they were reaching out to swallow us both whole. The vibration of my cell phone against the hard surface of the kitchen counter sounded like a trapped insect buzzing for its life. It had not stopped for the last hour. I did not need to look at the screen to know who it was. The reinforcements had arrived. My other two daughters, Emily and Chloe, had joined the fray. I finally picked up the phone, my fingers stiff and clumsy. I opened the text thread. It was a barrage of blue bubbles. A digital firing squad. "Mom, Sarah is crying her eyes out. How could you be so selfish?" wrote Emily, who lived in Denver and had not visited in 3 years. "Dad left that money for the family, not for a pet. You are dishonoring his memory," added Chloe from her college dorm in Austin. "If Sarah cancels the wedding, I am not coming home for Christmas. I cannot believe you are choosing a dog over your own flesh and blood." I put the phone down, feeling a heavy stone settle in the pit of my stomach. They were all saying the same things, using the same words. Selfish, senile, krill. It was as if they were reading from a script written by Rob. The coordination was terrifying. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Was I the villain in this story? Was I really a bitter old woman hoarding cash while my children suffered? I looked into the living room. Sarah was lying on the sofa with a wet washcloth over her eyes, letting out dramatic, shuddering sighs every few minutes. Rob was in the kitchen, making himself a cup of tea, whistling a tune I did not recognize. He looked entirely too comfortable in my house. He looked like he owned it. "You should get going, Delilah," Rob called out, stirring sugar into his mug. "You do not want to be late for your shift. The last thing you need right now is to lose your job. We need that income stability." I looked at the clock on the stove. It was 9 at night. My shift started at 10. I usually left early to stop for coffee, but tonight my legs felt like lead. "I do not want to leave, Buddy," I said, looking at the dog. He was curled up on his bed, his breathing still noisy and wet. Rob walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, almost painful. "We will watch him, sis. Sarah and I are here. We will take good care of the old boy. Mark is picking up pizza. We will have a quiet night. Go, earn your keep. We will handle the home front." I hesitated. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to stay. It was a primal alarm, a mother's intuition that something was wrong. But then I looked at Sarah's tear-stained face and Rob's reassuring smile, and the old habit of compliance kicked in. I had spent 40 years doing what was expected of me. I went to work. I paid the bills. I did not cause scenes. "Okay," I whispered, just "Soi Ding Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than. Please make sure he has water, and do not give him any food. The vet said he needs an empty stomach if Soi Ding Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than if we do the surgery." Rob nodded solemnly. "Of course, water only. Now go." I grabbed my purse and keys, casting one last look at Buddy. He did not lift his head. The drive to the warehouse was a blur of highway lights and dark thoughts. I arrived at the distribution center and clocked in. The air inside was stale and smelled of cardboard and diesel fumes. The noise was deafening. The constant beep 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 of forklifts, the roar of conveyor belts, the shouting of supervisors. Usually, the rhythm of the work soothed me. It was mindless. It allowed me to disconnect. But tonight, the noise felt aggressive. Every beep sounded like a warning. I took my position at the sorting line. Packages came rushing down the belt, brown boxes, white envelopes, plastic bags. I scanned them, labeled them, and tossed them into the corresponding bins. Scan, beep, toss, scan, beep, toss. My mind kept drifting back to the house. Why had Rob been so eager for me to leave? Why was Sarah suddenly so quiet after her earlier explosion? And why did I feel this gnawing panic in my chest, like I had forgotten to turn off the stove? But 1,000 times worse, 2 hours into the shift, I went to the break room to get some water. I pulled out my phone. No new messages. That was strange. Usually, when they were angry, they bombarded me until I broke. The silence was more terrifying than the noise. I tried to call the landline at home. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried calling Sarah's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Rob. Voicemail. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I pictured Buddy lying on his rug. I pictured Rob's cold eyes. I remembered his suggestion about mercy. You do the humane thing, Delilah. You let him go. A wave of nausea washed over me. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered, making the room swim. Hey, D, you okay? I looked up to see Mike, one of the forklift drivers. He was a big guy with a kind face. You look like you are going to pass out, he said. You are pale as a sheet. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than I do not feel well. Mike, I stammered. I need to go. He nodded. Go tell the supervisor. I will cover for you for a few minutes. Go. I did not wait. I practically ran to the manager's office and told him I was vomiting. He waved me off, annoyed, but I did not care. I clocked out at midnight, 4 hours early. As I walked to my car in the massive, dark parking lot, the silence of the night felt heavy. I got into my old Buick and turned the key. The engine sputtered and died. Please, not now. I begged. I turned the key again. It roared to life. I drove home like a maniac, ignoring the speed limits. The dread in my chest had turned into a physical pain. I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that something terrible was happening in my house. My family was there. Yes, my blood, my kin. But as I sped down the empty highway, the realization hit me. I was not rushing home to be with my family. I was rushing home to save Buddy from them. The betrayal tasted like ash in my mouth. I had spent my life protecting my children from the world. I never thought I would have to protect the world from my children. I pulled into my street. The house was dark, except for the flickering light of the television in the living room. My car headlights swept across the front yard. I parked on the curb, not wanting the sound of the garage door to alert them. I crept up the walkway, my keys clutched in my hand like a weapon. I reached the front door and unlocked it as quietly as I could. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stepped inside. The air smelled strange, not like coffee or dinner. It smelled Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than chemical. I walked into the living room. The television was playing a late-night infomercial. Sarah was asleep on the sofa. Rob was in the armchair, his head lolling back, snoring softly. But where was Buddy? Buddy? I whispered. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. Do dièse est supérieur à silence. I ran to the kitchen. His water bowl was full. His food bowl. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. R. Ting Hao Dayu. I stopped. The food bowl was empty, but I had told them no food. I knelt down to look closer. There was a fine, powdery residue at the bottom of the bowl. It was white. Panic exploded in my brain. I ran to the back door and threw it open. Buddy! I screamed into the darkness of the backyard. I heard a sound, a low, rhythmic thumping near the old oak tree. I ran toward it, stumbling in the dark, Buddy was there. He was lying on his side. His legs were paddling the air, as if he were trying to run, but could not find the ground. Foam was bubbling from his mouth. His eyes were rolled back in his head. Oh God, no, I sobbed, dropping to my knees in the dirt. No, no, no. I gathered his heavy, convulsing body into my arms. He was burning up. What did they do to you? I wailed, my voice cracking. And in that moment, as I held my dying dog in the dirt of my own backyard while my family slept peacefully inside, something inside me broke. The mother who forgave everything, the widow who kept the peace, the woman who lived to serve. She died right there under the oak tree. I was not Delilah the doormat anymore. I was a witness to a murder in progress, and I was going to scream. I did not scream. Not yet. The scream died in my throat, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity that I had never felt before. It was as if the world suddenly snapped into high-definition focus. The sound of crickets, the smell of wet grass and vomit, the rhythmic thudding of Buddy's paws against the earth as he seized. I scooped him up. He weighed 70 pounds. Dead weight, but adrenaline gave me the strength of 10 women. I staggered to the car, laid him across the back seat, and sped off into the night. I did not look back at the house. I did not wake them up. They did not deserve to know. The drive to the emergency vet clinic was a blur of red lights ran and silent prayers whispered, "Please, God, take the money, take the house, just save him." When I burst through the doors of the 24-hour animal hospital, I was covered in dirt and dog slobber. A nurse rushed over. They took Buddy from me, placed him on a gurney, and wheeled him behind double doors. I collapsed onto a chair in the waiting room. It was different from Dr. Evans's office. This place was sterile, cold, lit by harsh fluorescent strips that hummed like angry bees. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my hands. They were shaking so violently I had to clasp them together to make it stop. Finally, a young doctor came out, Dr. Patel. She looked exhausted. "Mrs. Vance?" I stood up. "Is he Sayu Jinghao Ling or Jinghao Dayu?" "He is alive," she said, but it was close. We had to pump his stomach and give him activated charcoal. He is stable now, but we need to keep him for observation. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. "Thank you." "Oh, thank you. But Mrs. Vance," Dr. Patel continued, her expression grim, "we found something in his stomach contents. A large amount of undigested medication." "Medication?" I repeated. "He is not on any medication." The doctor held up a small plastic bag. Inside was a partially dissolved blue pill. "We identified it as Zolpidem," she said. "Ambien, a very high dose, enough to kill a human, let alone a dog with a compromised system. This was not an accident. Mrs. Vance, dogs do not just find a bottle of sleeping pills and open it. Someone fed this to him." The room went silent. The hum of the lights seemed to get louder. "Sayu Jinghao Ling, dos numeral es mayor que Ambien." My brother, Rob, had a prescription for Ambien. He complained about his insomnia constantly. He rattled the bottle like a maraca whenever he visited. The memory of the empty food bowl flashed in my mind. The white powder, the sleeping house. You do the humane thing. Delilah, you let him go. It was not just a suggestion. It was a plan. They did not just want the money. They wanted to erase the obstacle. They wanted to kill Buddy to save me the trouble, to free up the cash for Sarah's wedding. My daughter, my brother, They had conspired to murder the only creature in my life that loved me unconditionally. A fire ignited in my belly. It was not the warm flicker of anger. It was a cold, blue flame of hatred. "Can I have a copy of the toxicology report?" I asked, my voice steady. "And the stomach contents?" Dr. Patel looked at me, surprised by my calmness. "Yes, of course. But why?" "Sao Jinghao Ling. R. Jinghao Dayu. I need evidence," I said. I stayed at the clinic until dawn. I sat by Buddy's cage, watching the rise and fall of his chest. He was groggy, hooked up to intravenous lines, but he was alive. I stroked his paw and made him a promise. "They will pay for this, Buddy. I swear it." When I drove home, the sun was just cresting over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. I pulled into the driveway. The house was still quiet. The monsters were still sleeping. I walked inside. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I scrubbed the dirt from my hands. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was not Delilah Vance, the pushover. Her eyes were hard. Her mouth was a thin line. She looked dangerous. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee. I made it strong. I slammed the mugs onto the counter. The noise echoed through the silent house. 10 minutes later, Rob stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Sarah followed, wrapped in a silk robe, yawning. "Morning, Mum," Sarah mumbled. "You are home early." I turned slowly, a steaming mug in my hand. "Yes," I said. "I finished my shift." Rob looked around, confused. "Where is the dog?" "I do not hear him hacking up a lung this morning. He is gone," I said simply. The room seemed to freeze. Sarah's eyes widened. Rob stopped mid-stretch. "Gone?" Sarah asked, her voice breathless. "You mean Sao Yu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu? He passed away last night." I lead. Smoothly, without a tremor, I found him in the yard. I took him to the vet to be cremated. A smile broke across Sarah's face. A genuine, radiant smile. She tried to hide it, covering her mouth with her hand, but her eyes were dancing. "Oh, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I am so sorry, but Sao Yu Jinghao Ling, 2 is greater than, at least he is not suffering anymore." Rob let out a long exhale, his shoulders relaxing. "It is for the best. Delilah, really, he was old. It was his time." "Yes," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "It was his time. So, Sao Yu Jinghao Ling, 2 is greater than." Sarah hesitated, stepping closer. "Does this mean Sao Yu Jinghao Ling, 2 is greater than you know? Sao Yu Jinghao Ling, 2 is greater than the money?" I looked at her. I looked at the greed shining in her eyes, brighter than any grief she might have felt for the pet she grew up with. "Yes," I said. "The surgery is not needed anymore. The money is available." Sarah squealed. She actually squealed. She ran over and hugged me. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you. You are saving my life. This wedding is going to be perfect." Rob clapped his hands together. "Excellent. A sad day, but a new beginning. Harold would be proud." I smiled at them. It was a terrifying smile, but they were too blinded by dollar signs to notice. "Yes," I said, "Harold would be very proud." I walked over to the pantry and reached for the cookie tin. I brought it down and placed it on the table. Sarah reached for it, but I put my hand on the lid. "Not yet," I said softly. "I need to go to the bank. I need to deposit this and get a cashier's check for the venue. They do not take cash. Remember? Right. Right? Sarah nodded eagerly. Go. Go now. The bank opens in an hour. I will. I said. I will take care of everything. I went to my bedroom to change. As I was putting on my coat, I saw Rob's jacket hanging on the back of the dining chair. He was in the living room, celebrating with Sarah and Mark, who had just woken up. I checked the pockets. I found the burner phone again, and this time, I found a folded piece of paper. It was a betting slip, a horse race. He had lost $5,000 on a single race last week, and underneath it, a letter from a loan shark, threatening to break his legs if he did not pay up by the end of the month. I took the papers. I took the phone. I put them in my purse. I walked out to the living room. I am going to the bank, I announced. We will wait here, Sarah chirped. We can go to the venue together afterward. I nodded. Yes, we will go together. I walked out the door, got into my car, and drove away. But I did not go to the bank. I went to the police station, and then I went to the printer shop. The old Delilah would have cried. The new Delilah was preparing a presentation. The First National Bank of Ohio smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a smell I associated with safety, with the slow, steady accumulation of a future. Today, it smelled like a funeral parlor. I sat across from Mrs. Higgins, the branch manager who had known my husband for 30 years. She adjusted her glasses, peering at the withdrawal slip I had just pushed across the mahogany desk. Are you sure about this, Delilah? She asked, her brow furrowed. You are clearing out the entire emergency fund and the checking account. This leaves you with Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, 2 hashes greater than well, with barely enough to keep the lights on for the month. I looked at her kind, wrinkled face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that my daughter was a thief and my brother was a murderer. Instead, I forced a tight, brittle smile. I am sure, Mrs. Higgins, I have some medical bills to pay. For Buddy, she softened instantly. Oh, the poor dear. Of course. She typed on her keyboard. The sound was rhythmic. Final. I need you to wire the funds directly to the account of the Veterinary Specialty Center, I instructed, sliding Dr. Evans' billing information across the desk. All of it, every cent. Mrs. Higgins paused. The vet, I thought, Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu. She stopped herself. It was not her place to ask. Yes, I said firmly. The vet. 10 minutes later, I walked out of the bank with a receipt in my purse and a debit card that was now essentially a piece of worthless plastic. My life savings were gone. But Buddy would get his surgery. He would have the best post-operative care money could buy. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine idling. I pulled out the burner phone I had stolen from Rob's jacket. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a cold, vibrating rage. I pressed the power button. No passcode. Rob was arrogant. He thought I was too stupid to touch technology, too old to be a threat. I opened the text messages. The most recent thread was with a contact named Golden Goose. That had to be Mark. She bought the dead dog story. Rob had texted at 6 a.m. We are in the clear. Get the papers ready. Perfect. Mark had replied. Make sure she signs the deed transfer before the ceremony. Tell her it is for tax purposes. Once the house is in Sarah's name, we can liquidate it within the month. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. They were not just after my savings. They were after the house, my home, Harold's legacy. They planned to sell it out from under me and leave me homeless. I scrolled up. My wife in Phoenix is getting suspicious. Mark wrote 2 days ago. She thinks I am at a conference in Chicago. We need to wrap this scam up fast. I miss my kids. I gasped. The sound loud in the enclosed space of the car. Mark was married. He had children. This entire engagement, this wedding, this romance, Soyutsinghaling. De dièse et supérieur, I was all a fabrication. Sarah was not just a co-conspirator. She was a victim too, in a way, but she was a willing victim, blinded by her own narcissism. I read one last message from Rob. Do not worry. My sister is a doormat. She will do whatever I say. She loves that girl more than she loves herself. We will pick the carcass clean and be gone before she realizes what happened. I put the phone down on the passenger seat. I looked out the window at the busy street, at people going about their normal lives. They walked their dogs, bought groceries, laughed on their phones. They had no idea that a few feet away, a woman's entire world had just been incinerated. I did not cry. I think I had run out of tears. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. It was the calm of the executioner before the lever is pulled. I drove home. When I walked through the front door, the atmosphere was festive. Sarah had opened a bottle of wine. My wine, a bottle Harold had been saving for our 30th anniversary, and was pouring it into 2 glasses. Mark was lounging on the sofa, his feet on the coffee table. Rob was pacing, looking energized. Did you get it? Sarah asked, not even looking up from her glass. I clutched my purse tighter. I went to the bank. I said, everything is arranged. Sarah let out a squeal of delight and rushed over to hug me. The smell of her expensive perfume made me nauseous. You are the best mom ever, she cried. I knew you would come through. Rob walked over, a smug grin plastered on his face. Good job. Sis, you made the right call. Family first. Always. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. I had to use every ounce of my willpower not to recoil, not to spit in his face. So, where's the check? Mark asked, sitting up. We need to get to Rosewood Manor by noon to lock in the rate. I did not get a check. I lied smoothly. The bank said it would take 24 hours to clear a cashier's check that large, but they authorized the full amount on my debit card. We can just swipe it at the venue. Mark frowned. Are you sure? That seems... Soyutsinghaling, dois cardinal e maior que regular. I shrugged, playing the confused old woman. I do not know. Mark, that is what Mrs. Higgins said. She raised my daily limit. She said it is faster this way. Rob intervened. It is fine. Mark, Delilah has excellent credit. If she says the card is ready, it is ready. Let us not look a gift horse in the mouth. He winked at me, a conspiratorial wink, as if we were on the same team. Go get changed. Mom, Sarah commanded, twirling around in the living room. Put on something nice. We are going to lunch at the venue after we pay. We need to celebrate. I walked down the hallway to my bedroom. I passed the spot on the rug where Buddy used to sleep. The indentation of his body was still there. A few golden hairs were caught in the weave of the carpet. I knelt down and touched the spot. It was cold. The tragedy was not that I had lost my money. The tragedy was not even that my dog had been poisoned. The tragedy was realizing that the people in the next room, the people who shared my blood, were monsters. I had raised a daughter who would kill for a party. I had loved a brother who would sell me for a gambling debt. I stood up and walked into my bedroom. I opened my closet. I chose a black dress. It was the dress I had worn to Harold's funeral. It seemed appropriate. Today, I was burying my family. I checked my purse one last time. The burner phone, the betting slips, the printout of the toxicology report from the vet, the bank receipt showing the zero balance. It was all there. My ammunition. I applied my lipstick in the mirror. My hand was steady as a rock. Delilah? Rob called from the living room. We are waiting. I am coming. I called back. I looked at my reflection one last time. Goodbye, Delilah the doormat. I whispered. I walked out of the room, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor like the ticking of a clock counting down to 0. Let us go, I said, smiling at them. Let us go pay for this wedding. Sarah clapped her hands. Oh, this is going to be the most magical day of my life. I looked at her, really looked at her, etching her face into my memory, because after today, I knew I would never see this version of her again. Yes, Sarah, I said, it will be a day none of us will ever forget. We walked out to the cars. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. It was a beautiful day for a massacre. Rosewood Manor rose from the manicured hills of Ohio like a monument to excess. It was a sprawling estate of white stone, towering pillars, and gardens that looked as if they had been trimmed with nail scissors. The air smelled of jasmine and money. It was the kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones, and the champagne was always chilled to exactly 45 degrees. We arrived in a convoy. Sarah and Mark were in the lead in their rental car, while Rob and I followed in my rusting Buick. The contrast was not lost on me as I steered my car up the long gravel driveway, the stones crunching loudly beneath my tires. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was not a mother driving to her daughter's wedding venue. I was a soldier marching into enemy territory, and for the first time in my life, I was the one with the weapon. Rob was humming along to the radio, tapping his fingers on the dashboard. He looked out the window at the lush greenery, his eyes scanning the property with the hunger of a wolf assessing a sheep pen. This is class, Delilah, he said, nodding approvingly. This is where the Vances belong. We are finally moving up in the world. Once Sarah marries this lawyer, and once we get the house situation sorted, Sau Ting Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than well. Retirement is going to be sweet. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My knuckles were white. Yes, Rob, I said, my voice flat. It is going to be unforgettable. We parked in front of the grand entrance. A valet opened my door. Looking slightly confused by the age of my vehicle, I stepped out, smoothing the fabric of my black dress. The sun was high and bright, casting sharp shadows across the pavement. Sarah was already waiting for us on the steps. She looked radiant. I had to admit, she was wearing a white sundress and oversized sunglasses, looking every bit the blushing bride. But as I got closer, I saw the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes darted around to make sure everything was perfect. She had invited an audience. I stopped in my tracks, standing in the foyer, visible through the open double doors, were about 30 people. I recognized them. They were her college friends, her colleagues from the marketing firm, a few of my own distant cousins, and even her high school nemesis, Jessica. Sarah had turned a simple deposit payment into a spectacle. She wanted witnesses to her triumph. She wanted everyone to see that she had won, that she had secured the fairy tale. Mom, Sarah called out, waving me over. Hurry up, everyone is waiting. The event coordinator has the contract ready. I walked up the steps. Mark was standing beside her, shaking hands with people, flashing that blinding, practiced smile. He looked the part of the doting fiancé perfectly. It was terrifying how good he was at it. Inside, the ballroom was breathtaking. A crystal chandelier the size of a small car hung from the ceiling, fracturing the light into 1,000 rainbows. A large projector screen at the front of the room was playing a slideshow of photos. Sarah and Mark on a beach. Sarah and Mark at a gala. Sarah and Mark looking adoringly into each other's eyes. Soft classical music played in the background. Sarah grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into my skin. "Okay, here's the plan," she hissed into my ear, her voice low so the guests would not hear. "You are going to go up to the front with us. Juliana, the planner, will present the card reader. You smile, you hand over the card, and you say how happy you are to do this. Do not embarrass me. Mom, do not cry. Do not talk about the dog. Just pay the bill." I looked at her. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. She was terrified that the illusion would shatter. "I understand," I said. We walked to the front of the room. The guests applauded politely. I saw my cousin Martha waving at me from the back. I gave her a small nod. Julianne, the event planner, was a tall woman with an impeccable bun and a clipboard. She smiled at us. A professional, polished smile. "Welcome, everyone," Julianne announced, her voice echoing slightly in the vast room. "We are so thrilled to welcome Sarah and Mark to the Rosewood family. Today, we make it official. The reservation of our grand ballroom for the wedding of the season." Sarah beamed, soaking up the attention like a flower soaking up rain. She squeezed Mark's hand. "And a special thank you to Mrs. Vance," Julianne continued, gesturing to me, "who has so generously provided the funds to make this dream a reality." The room clapped again. Rob was standing in the front row, chest puffed out, looking like the proud patriarch he had never been. Julianne held out a sleek, white card reader. "The total for the deposit and the first installment is $15,000. Julianne said softly, "Whenever you are ready, Mrs. Vance." The room went silent. Everyone was watching. 30 pairs of eyes were glued to my hands. Sarah was practically vibrating with anticipation. Mark was watching me with a hawk-like intensity. I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the cold plastic of the burner phone, the crisp paper of the toxicology report. Not yet. I pulled out my debit card. It was a standard blue bank card, worn at the edges. I handed it to Julianne. She took it, inserted it into the machine, and typed in the amount, $15,000. She turned the machine toward me. "Please enter your PIN." I punched in the 4 numbers. 1, 9, 6, 5. The year I was born. I pressed the green button. The machine beeped. A processing circle spun on the small screen. Sarah held her breath. Mark adjusted his tie. Rob leaned forward. Beep, 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 beep. A red light flashed on the machine. Julianne frowned. She pulled the card out and wiped the chip on her blazer. "It seems to have dragged," she whispered. "Let me try again." She inserted it again. She typed the numbers again. Beep, beep, beep. Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than declined. The word flashed on the screen in harsh black letters. Julianne looked up, her professional mask slipping slightly. "I am sorry, Mrs. Vance. The card has been declined. It says insufficient funds." The silence in the room changed. It went from anticipatory to awkward. A few people shuffled their feet. Someone coughed. Sarah's smile froze. Her eyes widened. "What?" she snapped. "That is impossible. Try it again." "Mom?" Mark said, his voice tight. Did you call the bank? Did you authorize the large transaction? I looked at them. I let the confusion play on my face for just a second longer. Yes, I said innocently. I went this morning. Then why is it not working? Sarah hissed, her voice rising an octave. Mom, fix this. Do not humiliate me. Julianne tried a third time. Sayuting Holing. 2# is greater than declined. Sarah snatched the card reader from Julianne's hand, staring at the screen as if she could change the outcome by sheer force of will. Then she threw the machine onto the table with a clatter. You did this on purpose, Sarah screamed. The veneer of the blushing bride vanished. Her face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. She turned on me, her finger pointing in my face. You are lying. You never transferred the money. You are trying to sabotage me because of that stupid dog. The guests gasped. Cousin Martha looked horrified. Sarah, calm down, Rob said, stepping forward, trying to salvage the situation. There must be a mistake. Delilah, tell them you have the money. I looked at Rob. I looked at Mark. I looked at Sarah. I took a step back, moving toward the small podium where the laptop controlling the projector was sitting. I do not have the money, I said clearly. My voice carried to the back of the room. Sarah let out a shriek that sounded more animal than human. What do you mean you do not have it? You said the dog died. You said you did not need the surgery. I did, I said. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the sheaf of papers. Sayuting Harling, 2# is greater than, but I lied. I placed the papers on the podium. I looked at the young man manning the laptop. I gave him a look that dared him to stop me. I unplugged the high-definition multimedia interface cable from the laptop playing the love story slideshow and plugged it into my own phone, which I had prepared earlier. The screen behind us flickered. The image of Sarah and Mark kissing on the beach vanished. In its place, a stark, white document appeared. It was blown up to 10 feet tall. Veterinary toxicology report. Patient, Buddy Vance. Substance identified. Zolpidem, also known as Ambien. Notes. Lethal dose administered. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. What is this? Mark demanded, stepping toward me. Turn that off. I stood my ground. I pointed to the screen. My dog did not die of natural causes, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. He was poisoned. Last night, with sleeping pills. I turned to Rob, pills that belonged to my brother. Rob's face went the color of ash. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. And do you know why? I continued, looking at the audience now. I addressed the guests directly, because my daughter and my brother decided that my dog's life was an inconvenience. They decided that killing him was the only way to free up my life savings so Sarah could have this party. Liar, Sarah screamed. She lunged at me, but Mark held her back. Not to protect me, but because he saw the cameras. People were filming. The guests had their phones out. She is senile. She is crazy, Sarah yelled, tears streaming down her face. She is making this up. I swiped on my phone screen. The image on the projector changed. Now, it was a screenshot of a text message conversation. Sender, Rob. Recipient, Golden Goose. That is Mark. Message. She bought the dead dog story. We are in the clear. Get the papers ready. Message. Once the house is in Sarah's name, we can liquidate it within the month. The room erupted. People were whispering loudly. Juliana, the event planner, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Mark froze. He looked at the screen, then at me. His suave demeanor cracked, revealing the terrified con artist underneath. This is Xiao Jinghao Ling. 2 hashes greater than this is out of context. Mark stammered. I swiped again. Sender. Mark. Recipient. My wife. In Phoenix. Message. Just 1 more week. Honey, I am closing the deal on the old lady in Ohio. Then I will be home with the cash. Kiss the kids for me. The silence that followed this image was absolute. It was a vacuum that sucked the air out of the room. Sarah stopped screaming. She stared at the screen. Her mouth hung open. She turned slowly to look at Mark. Wife, she whispered. Mark held up his hands. Sarah, baby, listen to me. That is not real. She photoshopped it. You have a wife? Sarah shrieked. She shoved him. She shoved him hard. You have kids? Mark stumbled back. Rob tried to sneak toward the exit, but I had already anticipated that I would not leave if I were you. Rob, I said into the microphone on the podium. I pointed to the back of the room. 2 uniformed police officers were standing in the doorway. They had been there for the last 5 minutes. I had called them from the car. I swiped to the final image. It was a photo of the bank transfer receipt I had made that morning. Amount, $15,342. Recipient, Veterinary Specialty Center. Memo, for Buddy surgery. I looked at my family. My daughter, who was now sobbing on the floor, her fairy tale destroyed. My brother, who was being handcuffed by the officers for animal cruelty and fraud. My almost son-in-law, who was trying to explain to the other officer that it was all a misunderstanding. I cleared my throat. I did not pay for the wedding. I said, my voice ringing out with a finality that shook the crystal chandeliers. I paid for loyalty. I paid to save the one soul in this family who has never lied to me. I walked over to Sarah. She looked up at me, her mascara running down her face in black rivulets. She looked like a child again, a broken, spoiled child. Mom, she whimpered, help me. I looked down at her. I felt a twinge of pain in my heart, the old instinct to fix it, to soothe her, to pay the bill. But then I thought of Buddy, convulsing in the dirt. I thought of the pills in his bowl. I am sorry, Sarah, I said softly, but I think you are on your own for this one. I turned my back on her. I walked past Mark, who was being read his rights. I walked past Rob, who was shouting that I was a traitor. I walked past the stunned guests who parted like the Red Sea to let me through. I walked out of the ballroom, down the grand steps, and into the bright, blinding sunshine. I got into my old, rusting Buick. I started the engine, and for the first time in 10 years, as I drove away from the wreckage of my family, I did not feel lonely. I felt clean. The internet moves faster than justice. By the time I parked my car back at the Veterinary Specialty Center, the video was already trending. I sat in the waiting room, the same sterile room where I had prayed for Buddy's life just 24 hours earlier. It was quiet here, a stark contrast to the cacophony inside my phone. My niece, the one who lives in Oregon and had not spoken to the family in years, sent me a link. The subject line was just 2 words. Holy cow. I clicked it. It was a TikTok video, shaky and vertical, filmed by one of Sarah's so-called friends from the back of the ballroom. The caption read, Mom destroys bridezilla and cheating groom. Wait for the end. I watched myself on the small screen. I looked small in that black dress, standing against the backdrop of luxury. But my voice, Xiao Jinghao Ling, 2# is greater than my voice sounded like thunder. I watched as I exposed the toxicology report. I watched Sarah scream. I watched the police enter. The video had 3 million views. I scrolled down to the comments. It was a digital coliseum, and the lions were hungry. That mom is a legend. Who tries to kill a dog for a wedding? I hope the daughter rots. Team Delilah all the way. The groom has a wife? New fear unlocked. Justice for Buddy. We need an update on the dog. I turned off the screen. My hands were trembling again. I had wanted to expose them. I had wanted to stop them. But I had not anticipated this. I had just unleashed a global mob upon my own child. Sarah was not just broke now. She was a pariah. A nurse walked by, pushing a cart of medication. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes widened in recognition. "Oh my goodness," she gasped. "You are her. You are the lady from the video." I offered a weak smile. "I am just here for my dog." The nurse looked at me with something akin to awe. "We all saw it in the break room. We were cheering for you. Is Buddy okay? Is he the golden retriever in intensive care unit? He is recovering." I said, "I hope. I will make sure he gets extra treats." She promised, giving me a thumbs up before hurrying away. It felt surreal. I was a hero to strangers, but a villain to my blood. My phone rang again. It was not a family member this time. It was a number I did not recognize. "Hello, Mrs. Vance? This is Julianne from Rosewood Manor." Her voice was no longer professional and polished. It sounded strained, bordering on panic. "Mrs. Vance, we have a situation. The police took Mr. Reynolds and your brother away. And your daughter, Sao Jing Haoling, 2# is greater than well. Sarah is currently locked in our bridal suite bathroom and refuses to come out. She is screaming at anyone who knocks." I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the wall. "That sounds like a problem." "Juliana, it is a significant problem," Juliana snapped. "We have vendors here. The caterers have prepared food for 100 people. The florist has set up. The musicians are on the clock since the card was declined. We have no payment on file. Someone needs to pay for the cancellation fees and the services rendered. Sarah is saying you will pay." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Sarah is mistaken," I said calmly. "I did not sign a contract." "Juliana, Sarah did. Mark did. My name is not on any of that paperwork." There was a silence on the other end. I could hear Julianne flipping through pages frantically. "But Sao Jing Haoling, 2# is greater than she is your daughter. Sao Jing Haoling, R. Jingho Dayu. She is a 26-year-old woman." I corrected, "And I suggest you call the police to remove her from your bathroom if she is trespassing. As for the bill, you can send it to her apartment or perhaps to her fiancé's wife in Phoenix. I hear she is the one with the actual assets." I hung up. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and familiar. I was leaving Sarah to the wolves. She would be sued. She would be bankrupt. She would have an eviction on her record. But then I remembered the text message. "Pick the carcass clean." They had planned to leave me with nothing. I was simply returning the favor. Later that afternoon, the news cycle shifted from entertainment to crime. A local news station ran a segment on the arrest. Mark, whose real name turned out to be Anthony, was wanted in 3 states for romance scams. He had a history of targeting vulnerable women, getting engaged, and then vanishing with their savings or property deeds. Rob had been his finder, the one who identified the mark. The mark was me. My own brother had scouted me like a deer in hunting season. The report showed Mark's mugshot. He looked tired, stripped of his expensive suit and confident grin. Then they showed Rob. He looked angry, glaring at the camera with pure malice. Then, the reporter interviewed a woman via video call. It was Mark's wife from Phoenix. She was holding a toddler on her hip, her face swollen from crying. He told me he was a sales consultant. She sobbed. He said he was traveling to provide for us. I had no idea he was marrying another woman. I feel so sorry for that family in Ohio. I sat in the hospital cafeteria, stirring a cup of lukewarm tea. The woman on the screen pitied me. The world pitied me. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from my employer. Subject: leave of absence. Delilah, given the recent media attention involving your family, corporate suggests you take some time off until things settle down. We want to avoid any disruptions at the distribution center. Disruptions. That was corporate speak for you, are a distraction. I had lost my privacy. I had arguably lost my job. I had lost my relationship with my children. My other two daughters, Emily and Chloe, had gone silent. They had deleted their social media profiles within hours of the video going viral. Terrified of being associated with Sarah, they did not call to check on me. They simply vanished to save their own skins. I was alone in the eye of the hurricane. Dr. Evans came into the cafeteria. He looked weary but smiled when he saw me. "Delilah," he said gently. I stood up, my heart hammering. "Is he Sao Ting Hao Ling? Ar Ting Hao Dayu?" "He is awake," Dr. Evans said, "and he is hungry." He ate a small bowl of chicken and rice. Tears, hot and fast, finally spilled over my cheeks. I covered my face with my hands. "Can I see him?" I choked out. "Come on," Dr. Evans said. He led me back through the double doors. In a large kennel at the end of the row, lying on a thick blanket, was Buddy. He looked rough. He had a shaved patch on his leg for the intravenous line, and his eyes were still a little groggy. But when he saw me, his tail gave a weak thump-thump against the floor. I opened the cage door and climbed inside. I did not care about the rules. I curled up on the floor next to him, burying my face in his neck. He smelled of antiseptic and dog, the best smell in the world. He licked the tears from my cheek. I lost everything. "Buddy," I whispered into his fur. "They are all gone." He let out a sigh and rested his heavy head on my lap. He did not care about the viral video. He did not care about the money. He was just glad I was there. And in that moment, listening to the steady beat of his heart, I realized I had not lost everything. I had saved the only thing that mattered. The rest. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2# is greater than the house. The reputation. The family name. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2# is greater than that was just the price of admission. I checked my phone one last time before turning it off completely. A new notification from the GoFundMe platform popped up. I had not started a campaign. Someone else had. Title: Justice for Buddy and Grandma Delilah. Amount raised: $52,000. I stared at the number. The strangers who watched a 10-second video cared more about my well-being than the people I had birthed and raised. I put the phone away. I wrapped my arms around my dog. The world outside could burn. I was right where I needed to be. The silence in the house was heavy. It was not the peaceful quiet of a library, but the suffocating stillness of a crypt. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes. Buddy lay next to me, his head resting on his front paws. He was wearing a plastic cone around his neck to stop him from licking his shaved leg. And every time he moved, the plastic scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound like a knife on bone. It had been 3 days since the wedding that never happened. 3 days since I watched the police put handcuffs on my brother. 3 days since my daughter became the laughingstock of the internet. I picked up a framed photograph from the coffee table. It was taken 10 years ago at Thanksgiving. Harold was carving the turkey. Sarah and her sisters were laughing. Rob was holding up a glass of wine in a toast. We looked so happy. We looked like a family. I felt a physical ache in the center of my chest. It was a grief sharper than widowhood, because this loss was not an accident of nature. It was a choice. They had chosen money over me. They had chosen to kill the creature I loved to get to a bank account. I dropped the photo into the trash bag. The glass shattered. I did not flinch. The front door opened. I had not changed the locks yet. Sarah walked in. She looked like a ghost of the girl who had stood on the steps of Rosewood Manor. Her hair was matted. She was wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. Her eyes were red and swollen, rimmed with dark circles that no amount of concealer could hide. She stopped when she saw me packing. She looked at the boxes, then at the trash bags, then at Buddy. She did not ask how the dog was. "They are suing me," she said, her voice hoarse. I continued to wrap a porcelain vase in newspaper. "Who is suing you?" I asked without looking up. "Everyone," she whispered, sinking onto the sofa. "The venue, the caterer, the florist. Mark's Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than Mark's other wife, is threatening to sue me for emotional distress, saying I was the mistress. Mom, I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know he was married. I believed her on that point. Sarah was too vain to knowingly be the other woman, but that did not absolve her of the rest. I am $50,000 in debt. Mom, she continued, staring at the ceiling. My credit is ruined. I lost my job. My boss said I brought disrepute to the firm. I have nowhere to go. My landlord gave me an eviction notice this morning because Mark's name was on the lease and the police froze his assets. She looked at me then. It was the look I knew well. The look she used when she was 6 and broke a neighbor's window. The look that said, "Fix it." "Mommy, can I stay here?" she asked. "Just for a while? Until I get back on my feet?" I stopped packing. I looked at my daughter. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I searched in vain for remorse. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry she was broke. But was she sorry she tried to kill Buddy? I stood up. My knees popped. I felt every minute of my 58 years. "No, Sarah," I said. She blinked, stunned. "What? You cannot stay here." I repeated, "I am selling the house." Her jaw dropped. "You are selling Daddy's house? You cannot do that. That is our home. That is my inheritance." I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "Your inheritance?" I asked. "You tried to poison my dog to get your inheritance early. Sarah, you lost your right to this house the moment you put those pills in his bowl." "I did not do it," she cried, the lie coming automatic and fast. "It was Rob. Rob made me do it." I walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up the toxicology report and the printout of the texts. I slammed them down in front of her. "Stop it," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Just stop lying." I saw the texts. I saw you smiling when I told you he was dead. I saw you celebrating. Sarah shrank back into the cushions. She pulled her knees to her chest and began to weep. It was a pitiful, ugly sound. "Mom, please," she sobbed. "I have nothing. I am your daughter. You cannot just throw me on the street. What will people say?" I looked at the phone, sitting on the table. The GoFundMe account had reached $65,000. Strangers were sending me messages of love and support. People are saying I should have called the police on you. 2. I said, but I did not. That is the last favor you will ever get from me. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The afternoon sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. You need to leave. Sarah, she stared at me, her mouth open. She realized, finally, that the well had run dry. The bank of Mom was closed forever. She stood up slowly. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. Her face hardened, shifting from pathetic to venomous in a heartbeat. I hate you, she spat. I hope you and that stupid dog rot in hell. She stomped past me as she reached the door. She turned back one last time. Mark was right, she sneered. You are just a sad, lonely old woman. You are going to die alone. She slammed the door behind her. The house shook. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain into place. I went back to the living room and sat down next to Buddy. He lifted his head and licked my hand. I am not alone, I whispered to him, but as I looked around the empty room, at the spaces on the walls where the family photos used to hang, I felt a cold wind blow through my soul. I had won the war, but the battlefield was a graveyard. I had my justice, but I had lost my child. I picked up the packing tape. The sound of it ripping off the roll was loud and harsh. I sealed the box. 2 months later, the Ohio sky was a brilliant, piercing blue. It was the kind of day that promised new beginnings. I stood in the driveway of the house that had been my prison for the last decade. The sold sign was planted firmly in the front lawn. A red sticker slapped diagonally across it. Behind me hummed a beast of a machine. It was a 40-foot Class A motorhome, gleaming in silver and black. It had a king-sized bed, a full kitchen, and, most importantly, a custom-built ramp for an aging golden retriever. Buddy sat in the passenger seat, his head sticking out of the open window. His fur had grown back over his shaved leg, thick and lustrous. He barked at a squirrel, a deep, healthy sound that warmed my soul. The tumor was gone. The poison was gone. He was 8 years old, but he looked 5. I checked the side storage compartment one last time. It was stocked with canned goods, dog food, and maps of every national park from here to the Pacific Ocean. A car pulled up to the curb. It was a rusted sedan with a dented bumper, a far cry from the luxury rentals Sarah used to parade around in. My daughter stepped out. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a faded uniform from a local diner. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she looked tired. Not the dramatic, fake tiredness she used to perform, but a bone-deep exhaustion. She walked up the driveway, her hands shoved into her pockets. She stopped a few feet away from me. She looked at the motorhome, then at the house, then at me. So, this is it, she said. You are really leaving. I nodded. The closing documents were signed this morning. The new owners move in on Friday. Sarah kicked a pebble with her sneaker. Where are you going? She asked. West, I said. Maybe the Grand Canyon. Maybe Yellowstone. Buddy has never seen a buffalo. Sarah let out a short, bitter laugh. A dog sightseeing tour. Must be nice. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw the little girl she used to be. The girl who used to bring me dandelions. But then the image flickered and died, replaced by the woman who had stood in a ballroom and screamed for my money. I heard about the GoFundMe, Sarah said, her voice dropping. People sent you a lot of money, more than $100,000. I crossed my arms. Yes, they did. I donated it, I said. Sarah's head snapped up. What? I kept $50,000 for the recreational vehicle and our travel expenses. The rest, Saoyi, Jingho, Ling, 2# is greater than the other 100,000 from the house sale and the donations. Saoyu Jingho Ling, 2# is greater than I gave it to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. In your name. Sarah's face went pale. You gave away a fortune to a shelter? Mom, I am drowning in debt. I am working double shifts at a diner just to pay the interest on the credit cards. Mark's lawyers are coming after me for legal fees. I am eating ramen noodles every night. I looked at her without blinking. I know. Sarah, she stepped closer, desperation creeping into her voice. Mom, please, just $5,000, just enough to get an apartment deposit. I cannot live in that motel anymore. It has roaches. I reached into the front seat of the motorhome and pulled out a thick, padded envelope. I had prepared it last night. I have something for you, I said. Sarah's eyes lit up. She snatched the envelope from my hand. She tore it open. Expecting a stack of cash or a check, she pulled out a paperback book. The title stared up at her in bold, yellow letters. Total Money Makeover. A proven plan for financial fitness. She stared at the book. Then she looked at me, her face twisting in disbelief. Is this a joke? She whispered. No, I said. It is the most valuable thing I can give you. I took a step toward the driver's side door. I failed you, Sarah, I said softly. I spent your whole life fixing your mistakes. I paid your bills. I smoothed things over. I taught you that there are no consequences. I turned you into a cripple who cannot walk on her own 2 feet. I climbed up the steps into the motorhome. I sat in the driver's seat and looked down at her through the open window. I am done enabling you. If you want to survive, you will figure it out, just like I did. Mom, Sarah screamed, throwing the book onto the pavement. You cannot just leave me. I am your daughter. I started the engine. The diesel motor roared to life, drowning out her voice. Buddy barked, his tail wagging. I released the parking brake. I am not just a mother anymore. Sarah, I said, though I knew she could not hear me over the engine. I am a survivor. I put the vehicle in gear. I did not look in the rearview mirror as I pulled away from the curb. I did not want to see her standing there. I knew she would cry. I knew she would curse me. But I also knew that, for the first time in 26 years, she was actually living her own life. The road stretched out before me, wide and open. I reached over and patted Buddy's head, ready for an adventure. Boy? I asked. He looked at me with those soulful brown eyes and gave a soft woof. I smiled. I turned on the radio. A classic rock song filled the cabin. I drove toward the horizon, leaving the ghosts of the past in the dust. I was Delilah Vance. I had no house. I had no family. But as the wind rushed through the window and the sun warmed my face, I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free.